to this second meeting of the Plants and Animals Committee, the joint meeting, which will follow up on what has happened in the past 2 weeks. There have been working groups that we have set up at the first meeting and that have done their work. Thank you very much for them for submitting the working group reports. And we still have some outstanding issues that we also have to deal with. So first, I would like to ask whether the Secretariat has some general announcements to make. So, Tom.
Thank you very much, Matthias and Flor, and welcome everybody to this last week, potentially the most exciting week of the ACMPC that we've organized in June of this year. I would just like to remind participants that the Animals Committee will continue its deliberations and work and conclude its deliberations and work tomorrow and on Thursday. And that the Plants Committee will conclude its work on Wednesday and Thursday. So Thursday, 24th June, will be a day where we have 3 hours of Animals and Plants Committee meetings, probably 2 hours for the Animals Committee and 1 hour for the Plants Committee to conclude business. You can find the order in which the items on the Animals and Plants Committee agendas are going to be considered. The order of these items is, you can find it on the top of the page, Animals Committee and Plants Committee page, the agenda and documents page. And the order is mentioned at the top of that page. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretariat. We have seen that we still have a lot of documents to work through, so that's why we have scheduled also the Thursday for our work to be finished. But if we are super rapid, maybe we can even conclude tomorrow and on Wednesday. But looking at the heavy agenda, I'm a bit afraid we will have to need the Thursday as well. So, with this, I would like to start by looking at the executive summary that has been posted on the website. And before we look at this document, I would like to, we have received several comments from parties and observers that their contributions, their interventions were not noted on the executive summary. So just to make clear what the executive summary and the summary record are, I would like to refer you all to Rule 18 of the Rules of Procedure of the Animals and Plants Committees. This explains that the executive summary contains the decisions of the committee, which come into effect as soon as the executive summary is endorsed by the committees. On the other hand, the summary record, which is produced later, meaning within 40 working days of the meeting, will for each agenda item contain a short statement indicating the main points of the discussion, the text indicating the decisions that were made, as it appears in the executive summary, and the text of any statement provided by any member, acting members, alternate members, or the observer from any party that was read into the record during the meeting. The participants in the debate shall also be included at the end of each topic. So the summary record will record what you have been saying, what your contribution were, and the executive summary only lists the decisions that were taken. That also includes, for instance, the membership of the working groups. If we have formed a working group and I have read out all the participants, and later, after that meeting, when the working group starts, there may be some members added, some parties added. They will not appear in the executive summary, but they will appear in the working group reports and also in the summary record. So just to make clear what I will be asking in a minute now of you. Well, good. Referring you to document AC31 PC25 Sum 1. It is the summary record of our meeting on the 5th of June. And I would like now open the floor for any comments or on the executive summary that is before you. Does anybody have comments or questions or additions to the executive summary? I don't see any, so this... Sorry?
Mr. Chair, I think that the PC representative of the North American region is asking the floor.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I oversaw that. Sorry about that. North America, Rosemary, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, I have an edit to AC 42, PC 40, guidance for the publication of the appendices. It was noted in the plenary that the chair very adequately explained what noted means. And we think this is an important point to put in the executive summary. So we would suggest this sentence at the end of that paragraph would read, given that the Animals and Plants Committee were not provided an opportunity for meaningful input or discussion of this document, it was requested that the record reflect that noting the document does not imply agreement or endorsement. Should I repeat it?
Yes, please, slowly.
Slowly. Given that the Animals and Plants Committee were not provided an opportunity for input or discussion of this document, it was requested that the record reflect that noting the document does not imply agreement or endorsement.
Can you repeat it once more, please?
Sure. Given that the Animals and Plants Committee were not provided an opportunity for input or discussion of this document, it was requested that the record reflect that noting the document does not imply agreement or endorsement.
Okay. Can I read it out to you so that you can see if I have captured it correctly? Given that the Animals and Plants Committee were not provided an opportunity for input or discussion of this document, it was requested that noting the document did not imply agreement or endorsement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
I have one other edit, small edit, to 19.321.
19.321, yes, okay.
It currently reads, the committee's noted document AC 31, document 19.3, PC 25, document 21, and agreed to propose to the Standing Committee at its 74th meeting the extension of decision 18.172, and we would add the phrase, for further work beyond COP19.
Okay, for further work beyond COP19.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I see that Cambodia has asked for the floor. Cambodia, you have the floor. Can you please give the floor to Cambodia? Yes,
sorry,
Cambodia.
Sorry. I did not ask for the floor. It was in the last time. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. So anybody else asking for the floor? Okay. So then I will conclude that the committees, the joint committees of Plants and Animals Committee, adopt document AC31 PC25 Sum 1 with the amended by the United States. I think we have all captured the amendments. I don't need to read them out again. So I think that concludes the executive summary. So thank you very much. We would then move on to document AC31 PC25 COM1 on Appendix I. It is the report from the working group on Appendix I, which I co-chaired with the alternative representative for Asia of the Plants Committee, Mrs. Teng, and the alternate representative for Asia on the Animals Committee, Mrs. Terada. First, I would like to thank the co-chairs for supporting me in this work, and also the Secretariat for organizing this working group. And of course, all the working group members for their constructive inputs and discussions. The mandate was to review the criteria and methodology used for the rapid assessment, together with the additional criterion mentioned in paragraph 1 to the addendum of document AC31 Doc 9 PC25 Doc 10, and provide guidance to the Secretariat on its further implementation of Decision 1828. So at the outset, in advance of the meeting, we asked the working group whether, in their view, the rapid assessment satisfied the provisions of Decision 1828, and if yes, whether the methodology and criteria used in the rapid assessment were complete or needed amendments. We received several written input from the members, and based on the variety and disparity of opinions expressed in the feedback, we found it useful to first have a good discussion on the expectations of the members and the outcomes they would like to see as a result of that whole process. The main points are summarized on page 2 of this document. I won't read them all. You have had ample time to look at them. It was also the general view of the working group that in order to advance the work on the above-mentioned objectives, 2 work streams should be followed that run in parallel, and the results of each must feed into the other in the future. The first process involves an academic desktop exercise, and the second will instruct the Secretariat in consultation with the Plants and Animals Committees through their chair and invited experts to continue to refine the methodology and its criteria for future detailed assessment of appendix listed species. This is also based on the feedback from this working group. In relation to the additional criterion mentioned in paragraph 9 to the addendum of the document AC31, the working group discussed the different issues around applying a metric of captive breeding to the analysis and invited the Secretariat to further refine the criteria based on the input provided by the working group. So the recommendations are on page 3. And the working group recommended that the Animals and Plants Committee agree to request the Secretariat to undertake the following: to continue the collaboration with the University of Applied Sciences Van Hal Larenstein in the Netherlands in carrying out the analysis of a selection of Appendix I species, and use these case studies to compile possible measures that the Conference of the Parties could adopt within its mandate to improve the conservation status of potential species of concern, and in consultation with the Plants and Animals Committees through their chairs and invited experts to further refine the methodology and its criteria for carrying out an assessment of species listed in Appendix I that might benefit from measures adopted by the Conference of the Parties, taking into account the suggestions from the working group, and draft decisions for submission to the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to ensure the further advancement of this work, including the possible development of an ongoing Appendix I assessment process to validate efficacy of listings. So this concludes my report from the working group, and I would now like to give the floor to the members of the Animals Committee for their comments. So I open the floor to members of the committee. I see a representative of North America. Rosemary, you have the floor. Could you please give the floor to Rosemary Nam, to the representative of North America?
Mr. Chair, and thank you for your work with this working group. Based on the in-session working group discussions, the North American region does not see that the working group had consensus on this being an assessment or a validation of efficacy. Our suggestion is that it would be preferable for the committees to have the opportunity to see the results of the immediate next steps prior to determining how we would advance the work, and that deciding if this takes the form of an ongoing assessment or validation process is premature at this time. Therefore, the North American region proposes the following change to B(ii). It would read, our suggested wording for B(ii) would be draft decisions for submission to the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to ensure the further advancement of this work, and then we would delete the phrase, including the possible development of an ongoing Appendix I assessment process to validate efficacy of listings, and instead put this phrase in, taking into account AC 31, PC 25, Com1, and the results of recommendations A and B(i).
Can you please repeat that sentence?
Sure. Little b, little double i's would now read, draft decisions for submission to the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to ensure the further advancement of this work, taking into account AC 31, PC 25, Com1, and the results of recommendations A and B(i), and thereby we would delete the phrase, including the possible development of an ongoing Appendix I assessment process to validate efficacy of listings.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is clear. What you are asking, do I see any other comments? As chair of this working group, I recall that there were several parties who were in support of adding this possible development of such a assessment process. And I wonder if the members who were in support of this deleting can maybe give their views, if they can support the deleting, if their wish would be included in what the North American region is proposing. So I opened the floor for comments on the suggested change by the North American region. I don't see anybody asking for the floor. Yes, Secretariat, you have the floor. Now I see two, but Secretariat, you have asked for the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had two small amendments to the recommendation that you just read out. The first one would be in the first line, the opening line, and replace the word "to request the Secretariat to undertake the following" by "to invite the Secretariat to undertake the following."
Yes, this is the normal way, yeah.
And the second amendment we propose would be in little a, where we, in the third line, you can see that it says to compile possible measures that the Conference of the Parties could adopt within its mandate. I think that within the CITES family there are more than only the COP that can consider measures like this, and perhaps the Conference of the Parties could be replaced by CITES.
Okay.
To incorporate the Conference of the Party, but also the scientific committees, the technical and the standing committee, etc., and the parties themselves. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think that makes completely sense. I now see Europe has asked for the floor. Dagmar, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning or good afternoon to all. Well, it's a bit difficult to react that quickly without more in-depth thinking of the impact of these changes. What we liked about the last part of the sentence was that it suggested or it worked towards development of an ongoing process. A kind of regular review as we have for Appendix II species. So this is the element which somehow would be still useful to keep in, even though we see some merits in the proposal by the US. So I probably cannot say more at this moment, but maybe we could still keep at least like considering the possible development of an ongoing Appendix I assessment process and finish the sentence there without the very last bit to validate efficacy of listings that could be deleted. Thank you.
Thank you, Europe. I have, is any other member asking for the floor? So I would open the floor then for Israel. Simon, you have the floor.
Chair, as we wish to concur also with the comments made by Europe, it's a little difficult to follow this way. I don't know if you, if the intent of the proposal by North America is to totally change this. The idea of this recommendation was to have a process where we can review Appendix I species, sort of like the review of significant trade. And I'm not sure if the wording that Rose has proposed is really going to reach that. And it went by very quickly, and so I may have missed it, and perhaps there's a way to read it again and to just be sure that we got the proposal.
Okay. Thank you, Israel. So I will read out again what the United States is proposing. In the recommendation B, little II, it would read now with the changes proposed by the North American region, is to draft decisions for submission to the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to ensure the further advancement of this work, taking into account document AC31, PC25, COM1, and the results of recommendations A and B, little I. So it would leave it open what actually will be done. It will depend on what comes out of the work under A and B, little I. That's how I understood it. Any other observer party asking for the floor? I would then see Sue Lieberman from WCS. Sue, you have the floor.
Yes. The U.S. the suggestion by the North American representative on the Plants Committee appears very logical to us, because I think, and we were a member of the working group, that the Conference of the Parties needs to see the results of the work. But this isn't meant to be a periodic review of the appendices or review of significant trade for Appendix I species, but an effort to also look at what additional measures would be required for Appendix I species that do not currently have measures adopted by the parties. So we think that the suggestion from the U.S. to see what the outcome of the additional desktop work is before making any conclusions on the efficacy of specific Appendix I listings, we think that goes beyond really what the Conference of the Parties directed under this issue. So we think the U.S. recommendation is consistent with what the working group had discussed, and we think it's preferable text. Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you, WCS. I see North America, you have asked the floor again. So, Rosemary, you have the floor.
The chair to take the floor again, but hearing the concerns from Europe and Israel, I could suggest a compromise. And so if we could change little b, double I to read draft decisions for submission to the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to ensure the further advancement of this work, including, this would be the compromise text, including the possible development of an ongoing assessment in Appendix I listings under CITES provisions. So that the door is, yes, I can read it again.
Yes, okay. Yes.
Little b, double I.
Including only, from starting from including.
Okay, including the possible development of an ongoing assessment for Appendix I listings under CITES provisions.
Of
I think
an ongoing process?
Assessment.
Yeah.
For Appendix I listings under the CITES provisions. This would leave the door open to what that form, that assessment would take, and address Europe and Israel's concern that that the process could continue.
Okay. So I see Israel has asked for the floor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think there may have been a bit of a misunderstanding of what my concern was. I actually liked the first version better than Rose's now new amended compromise. In our written comments in Israel, we had also asked to delete the last part of that sentence about assessment of Appendix I listings. And I think that I personally would rather go back to the previous version as it was proposed a few minutes ago by North America without this new added section, if that's all right with the other members. Thank you.
Thank you, Israel. I see Europe. Europe has asked for the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, I'm sorry to complicate your life because we like the new compromise better. It seems that it's really suggesting that a possible process assessment is developed. So there is still the word possible, and if it's not deemed appropriate, it may not materialize, but it somehow indicates that there should be a process towards assessment for Appendix I species, which we feel is really very, very much necessary, because unlike for Appendix II, there is currently no process to really show or provide some feedback for Appendix I. so the new wording seems better. Thank you.
Thank you, Europe. I see Cheetah Conservation Fund, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to echo Israel's intervention to erase that last part and go back to the US's initial one. The reason is that while we support a possible process where we can see how implementation of appendix I listings is going, I think that when we say something like look at the efficacy of listing, that does kind of echo the periodic review as opposed to looking at the efficacy of the implementation of anything that has to do with protecting Appendix I species. So this is a bit different. So that reevaluating Appendix I is a bit problematic, and it goes back to the periodic review. So I think that it would still be better to leave it open, and then this could be open to discussion in the next, and the US's first one allowed this, just because I know we don't have a lot of time in this meeting to really go over these things. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So far, I think we are going into the direction of agreeing more on the compromise version submitted by the United States. We have 2 members of the 2 committees who are in support of that change. And I think we could so far go along with that. Do I see more comments from members or observer parties on that way forward? I don't see any party, so last one on the list is HSI.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, just saying that we do support the process that the U.S. has suggested. We're very concerned that the words efficacy of Appendix I could mean different things to different people. It's just what it is you're looking at. It would really, the issue might be more implementation of these listings. And my recollection from the discussions in the working group was that we never really firmed up exactly what we were talking about. It was sort of tossed around as a possible process for the future. So I think it would be better to not have that specifically in there and leave that as one of the things that might emerge from the course of the part of the review that is still ongoing. This was based on the whole issue of what exactly we mean when we say what CITES can do to benefit Appendix I listed species. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, HSI. So I think I would then conclude and that the Animals Committee and Plants Committee agrees on the following recommendations. I will read them out slowly so that everyone can compare with their notes. So the working group recommends that the Animals and Plants Committee agree to invite the Secretariat to undertake the following: to continue the collaboration with the University of Applied Sciences Van Hal Larnstein in the Netherlands in carrying out the analysis of a selection of Appendix I species and use these case studies to compile possible measures that CITES could adopt within its mandate to improve the conservation status of potential species of concern, and B, in consultation with the Plants and Animals Committees through their chairs and invited experts to further refine the methodology and its criteria for carrying out an assessment of species listed in Appendix I that might benefit from measures adopted by the Conference of the Parties, taking into account the suggestions from the working group. And II, draft decisions for submission to the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to ensure the further advancement of this work, including the possible development of an ongoing assessment for Appendix I listings under the CITES provisions. So that would be my conclusion, that the two committees agree on these recommendations. Okay, thank you very much. So that is also concluded. Then I would move to the next document. I would like to open the agenda item number PC25, document 17, AC31, document 14.1. On non-detriment findings, and give the floor to the it is COM3. It's AC31 PC25 COM3 is the document that we have to consider. It is the working group report on non-detriment findings, and I would like to give the floor to the co-chairs, either representative of Europe, Daniel Wolf, or the alternate representative of North American region, Cecilia Lougheed, to introduce this report. So can I ask Canada to take the floor? Can you please give Canada the floor? Yes, thank you very much.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The in-session working group on non-detriment findings had the mandate, one, to review the Secretariat's suggestions regarding priority gaps and weaknesses and corresponding work streams as presented in the annex to the addendum of document AC31, Doc 14.1, PC25, Doc 17. To review the terms of reference of the Technical Advisory Committee in paragraph 8 of the addendum. 3, to consider the draft decisions in paragraph 9 of the addendum for submission to the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, and ultimately to formulate recommendations to the Animals and Plants Committee. The working group discussed all aspects of the mandate in 2 video meetings, and this also included considerations of written responses to questions that the co-chairs sent to the working group specific to the priority gaps, work streams, and the terms of references, the reference of the Technical Advisory Committee. The working group agreed to the following recommendations. Concerning the implementation of decisions 18.132 to 18.134, the working group recommends the Animals and Plants Committee to agree to the establishment of a Technical Advisory Committee to be co-chaired by the chairs of the Animals and Plants committees and consisting of members of the Animals and Plants Committees and a balanced representation of parties, intergovernmental organizations, and non-governmental organizations. The working group recommends that the Animals and Plants Committee chairs agree to advise the Secretariat on the modalities, terms of reference, and timing for establishing the Technical Advisory Committee. It is understood that the establishment of this advisory committee would be done in consultation with the chairs of the Animals and Plants Committees, who would consult with the committee members. Concerning priority gaps and weaknesses and corresponding work streams, there was general agreement on what the Secretariat proposed. However, the working group recommends the committee to agree to consider the inclusion of additional priorities and work streams and other recommendations pertaining to the structure of the work streams identified by this working group in its report AC31 PC25 COM3. In addition to those that have been identified in the addendum of AC Doc 14.1 PC25 Doc 17, when establishing the final priorities and work streams for this NDF work. If further prioritization was required for practical reasons, the working group recommends the committees to agree to consider the priorities proposed in AC 31 PC 25 COM3, so in the report of the working group. Concerning the terms of reference of the Technical Advisory Committee that were included in paragraph 8 of the addendum, the working group recommends the committees to agree that the Technical Advisory Committee membership should not be limited to 20 members, but also recommend not to make it too large as to hinder progress, and agree to consider balanced participation with the required expertise between exporting and importing parties, intergovernmental organizations, and non-governmental organizations. The working group further recommends the committees to consider terms of reference for the mandate of the Technical Advisory Committee that are described in this report. Concerning the draft decisions in paragraph 9 of the addendum, the working group recommends the committees to agree to submitting amended draft decisions to the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, as elaborated in AC 31 PC 25 COM3, which will ensure continuity of this important work, including the continued support of the process by the Technical Advisory Committee after COP19. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, North America, for this introduction, and thank you to the working group for its work. Before opening the floor for comments, I have one comment to make myself in my capacity as chair of the Animals Committee, who would have to implement these, especially the decisions. Concerning decision 19BB, letter A, that directs the Plants and Animals Committee, they shall continue the Technical Advisory Committee through which the Animals and Plants Committees provided support and advice for implementing decisions 18132 to 18134. I think that this part of the decision, I don't think that as an Animals Committee we can continue a Technical Advisory Committee. I would therefore propose that to make sure that this Technical Advisory Committee can continue its work post COP19, that we move the decision up to the decision directed to the Secretariat and introduce in 19AA little a new little I, which would read continuing the Technical Advisory Committee TAC through which the Animals and Plants Committees provided support and advice for implementing decisions 18132 and 18134. With this, we make sure that the TAC can continue its work post COP19, because it is the Secretariat who sets up such a Technical Advisory Committee, and by directing the Secretariat to continue that TAC, we would ensure that its continuity. So, because I don't see as Animals Committee that I can continue a TAC just like that. So to me, this would be the more appropriate process to make sure that the TAC continues. So that's what I would propose as a first change. But now I would like to open the floor for any comments from members of the Animals and Plants Committees. I see the representative of North America. Rosemary, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I ask you to please repeat your suggested change in the wording so that we could all get it? I guess I'm a little slow this morning at 6 a.m.
It hasn't anything to do with 6 a.m. Myself, I'm also slow. I had to ask you also four times to capture all these changes. So don't worry about that. I would propose to in decision 19BB, small letter A, to delete the part continue the technical advisory committee TAC through which the animals and plants committees provided support and advice for the implementing decisions 18132 to 18134. I would delete that part, so it would only remain in this 19BB little a, review the functioning of the TAC and so on. And I would move that deleted sentence up into decision 19AA, little a new little I, which would then read, the whole decision would then read, the Secretariat shall, subject to external funding, address priorities and capacity building related to non-detriment findings agreed by the Secretariat and the TAC in consultation with the Animals and Plants committees and parties by continuing the technical advisory committee TAC through which the Animals and Plants committees provided support and advice for implementing decisions 18132 to 18134, then organizing in consultation with the TAC and so on. So I would just move that sentence up into the tasks that we asked the Secretariat to do. Is that clear? I see Europe has asked for the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Matthias. Well, again, this is at the first sight a small change, which can, however, turn quite important. The place where the text is now clearly puts the mandate to work under the TAC or to supervise the work by the TAC to the Animals and Plants committees, which are representing parties. And let's remember that some of the tasks are rather important. They are about finalizing the agenda and deciding on which topics to take as priority. And therefore, we felt that it would be useful to have that really under the leadership by the Animals and Plants committees. At the same time, I fully understand your concerns that it's a bit of extensive work for the committees. So maybe in the end, we could support it, or we could leave it where it is, but add a sentence like under the or we could maybe move it, but still keep some addition like under the leadership of Animals and Plants committees or something along these lines, because let's not forget that the representation in TAC will be different from Animals and Plants committees, and we need somehow to ensure that it's the parties and the official committees by CITES which have the final word in deciding what will be discussed and how the meetings will run. So yeah. Sorry for not being very clear, but the preference would be maybe just to leave it where it is and add something like with the support by the Secretariat, or to move it and add something like under the leadership of Animals and Plants committees or something like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Europe. I see AC rep from Nomenclature. Peter Paul, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Alongside the European representative, it's also not exactly clear to me with the revised decision who exactly will establish this technical advisory committee, because this is not specifically tasked to the Secretariat in the preceding documentation. The best I can find is on page 6, where the Animals and Plants Committee should consider the following recommendations when establishing the technical advisory committee, but it does not specify that the committee chairs shall establish the committee. So by moving this under the Secretariat task in decision AA, this gets even less clear. So we need to figure out when and who will have responsibility for establishing this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, AC nomenclature specialist. I see North America has asked the floor. Ezekiel, you have the floor.
I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good day to all. Yes, similar to comments from European representative, we would like to keep the first sentence you suggest to move, because we still believe this is part of Animals and Plants Committee's leadership. But I think I understand your spirit by moving, but I would say by copying part of it under 19AA by saying continue to support the TAC under Animals and Plants Committee's leadership, something like that. So you're giving the mandate to the Secretariat before organizing the International Expert Workshop to continue support a technical advisory committee. So maybe that can be a solution, and also keeping the original text in the full paragraph of 19 BBA. I think that can make clear both elements. So my suggestion is to, in the new text that can be added in 19AA, is continue to support the Technical Advisory Committee on the leadership of Animals and Plants Committees. Okay. And to continue implementing decisions and so on.
Thank you, Ezekiel. Just a short question before you go out. It is not quite clear, as Peter Paul said, who will then form the TAC. I mean, as it stands now, it will be the chairs of the two committees who will support the Secretariat in forming that technical advisory committee. The duration of that technical advisory committee, where is it defined? Because normally these things, they have to be renewed whenever we have new composition of the animals committees after each COP. So I'm not quite sure how the process would then go when we continue that TAC. The membership, does it stay the same as we define through the chairs with the Secretariat, or how do we make sure that this continues to work? Do you have an idea there?
Not at this moment, but so one thing is establishment of that, was your questioning then. Sorry,
I didn't hear you.
So what your question is on their establishment, who will establish?
Well, I mean, the establishment of the TAC will be done by the Secretariat in consultation with the two chairs of the scientific committees.
Yeah, I think there are different elements because the continuation of the work under On the leadership of Animals and Plants Committee, it's fine, but seems like the very beginning is on the establishment. What you're suggesting.
Well, I mean that is written in the document of the working group.
Yeah, maybe I'm not very helpful, but we prefer to keep the original language in the first part of 19 BB A.
Okay.
And maybe we can add additional language specific to Secretariat to continue. At this moment, that's my best idea to continue to support.
Yes, okay, I got that.
Or establish and continue support. So it's clear in both sides. I think we need in both places.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, North America. I see China has asked for the floor for quite a while. So China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. China thanks the co-chairs of the working group for leading the Secretariat and the members through this meaningful discussion. And China agrees with the output of the working group, which would give a great impetus to the NDF of the Commission. And we have the following minor revisions to the document COM3. First, to avoid the relevant work of the Technical Advisory Committee being directly subject to the resolution COM 18.2 on the establishment of committees, we suggest adding ad hoc as a restrictive word before the TAC. Therefore, the paragraph of the concerning the implementation of decision 18.132 to 18.134 of the Conventions on page 2 of the COM3. The third line will be read as, and therefore agreed to recommend the establishment of an ad hoc technical advisory committee. At present, the current meeting recommends establishing a TAC, and we feel that the establishment and terms of reference of the TAC are not reflected in the draft decision submitted to the COP19 as currently revised, which may be also your concerns. And in addition to adding the qualifier ad hoc to the TAC in the draft decisions, we also support your proposal of moving the sentence to maybe for the mandates for the Secretariat, or we also suggest maybe we can revising the paragraph A of 19BB on page 7 of COM3 to reflect and to ensure the continuation of the TAC work. Therefore, the paragraph A of 19BB on page 7 of COM3 will be read as A, continue the ad hoc technical advisory committee established on the recommendations of the AC 31 PC 25, and then through which the Animals and Plants Committees provide support, which means we propose adding the kind of, small paragraphs to make a clarification of the process and the establishment of the TAC, and which refer to this meeting. And I will send these sentences, if you like, to the chat box for your consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, China. Can you please just quickly repeat the changes you wanted to add to 19 AA or 19BB. Can you please quickly repeat what you suggested as changes to 19BB letter A?
Yeah, okay. And for A, continue the ad hoc technical advisory committee established on the recommendations of the AC31, PC25. Yeah, that's two parts we propose to adding the small minor words.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see Europe has asked for the floor, so member.
Thank you very much. Well, at the first sight, the move of the paragraph to a different place does not seem to resolve the issue of COP electing new members of the committees and possible changes in the committees, because that will happen anyhow. So the question is, if the committee, the TAC, is established by the Animals and Plants committees, would it be possible that it continues? Because what we need is really continuation of the work, that it doesn't stop and restart after next COP. And then it should not be so problematic if it's under, or it should be even advantage if it's under the supervision of the Animals and Plants committees. Because when I look back in the document, it says that TAC should provide guidance to the Secretariat, or to direct the Secretariat as appropriate on a number of issues, etc. So it would sound a bit strange if Secretariat establishes the committee then to get direct directions from it. So somehow the role of the Animals and Plants committees does not seem to be complicating the issue, and with the suggestions by China, maybe modified still to improve the language, but deleting the reference to the Animals and Plants committees and just referring to the document might work. And I would like to support Hezekiah's suggestion that we keep the text where it is, the small a, but then copy the relevant part of it to 19AA, where we would request the Secretariat to provide relevant support to the Animals and Plants committees to carry out this work, and then hopefully it would be manageable. Thank you.
Thank you, Europe. I see Canada. Cecilia, you have the floor. Can you please try again? I think it hasn't worked, the connection. We do seem to have a technical problem here. So maybe try it again.
Thank you, Chair, and I apologize for the technical difficulties. I somehow was put off of the system. As one of the co-chairs of the working group, and on very brief discussion with my co-chairs, I would invite Daniel to add anything I may have missed. But there are a couple of points. One of them was brought by the nomenclature specialist, and it is the lack of clarity on who is establishing the Technical Advisory Committee. We noticed that after the fact, and we apologize because things are happening very rapidly and 4 a.m. in the morning, like others. Maybe things we weren't able to digest everything in as properly as we would like to. But if we go to COM 3 report, you can see that it says, and therefore, when it is talking about implementation of the decisions 18.132 to 18.134.
What page?
On page 2 of the report.
Okay.
The first paragraph of the recommendations, it says, pursuant to decisions 18.132 to 18.134, the Animals and Plants Committee consider the most effective way to provide advice and assistance to the Secretariat for their implementation, and therefore agreed to recommend the establishment of a technical advisory committee. So going back to, and I just wish to provide clarification on the discussions and the way we saw the discussions in the working group, where that there was significant support for the Animals and Plants Committee for retaining the leadership role that it has as the technical committee for CITES, technical committees for CITES, when it comes to advice pertaining to technical and scientific matters, and the leadership of the committees to guide the content and the structure of a future workshop. And it was very clear that the working group was leaning in that direction, and that was the advice, but also being mindful that the Secretariat should lead the organization per se, as well as retain the financial accountability, just to ensure that the process could be nimble and work as a reasonable speed without having the whole committees to agree to a contract, for example. So that is one thing. It would be, I think things would be clear in the decisions if it was the Animals and Plants Committees that were establishing the Technical Advisory Committee and not agreeing to recommend the establishment, because that introduces a bit of who is establishing the technical committee. So that is one thing. The other item is the recommendations from China on including ad hoc and addition to referring back to this recommendation. I think we think that would just add clarity. So those are the two things, Chair, for your consideration. It was one, the support from the working group to ensure that the Animals and Plants Committee indeed retain that ability to direct any technical and scientific work, while ensuring that the Secretariat retains financial accountability and it's able to organize the workshops and other work in a timely fashion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. I open the floor for further comments on that, so that we have clarity. Yes, Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you also for the interventions. Very, very helpful, very useful. And an ad hoc technical advisory group is indeed a correct terminology. We would like to remind that the current decisions that are mentioned, that we just mentioned, 18.132 to 18.134, but particularly 18.132, which is directed to the Secretariat, asks it to organize the workshop, instructs it to also decide what should be discussed at the workshop in terms of priorities, what type of guidance should be developed, etc. That is what the decision at the moment says. The Secretariat is to consult with the Animals and the Plants Committee and the parties, which it has done. We have in our document to you proposed that that's not enough. We would very much like to be accompanied by the Animals and Plants Committee and the parties throughout the implementation of this decision through a technical advisory committee. we have proposed some terms of reference and a composition for this technical advisory committee that we would like to create in case we have the funding to implement this large project. This is going to be an expensive and large decision to implement. Large project like this, the activities like this, the Secretariat usually forms advisory committees to help it, technical advisory committees to help it. And so that's the origin, at least, of the discussion on this technical advisory committee before COP19. We are completely supportive of the idea that this be prolonged and continued after COP19, so that there is no interruption with the work that we hope to be able to initiate on the NDF guidances in the next coming months or year. The Technical Advisory Committee, in our view, has to advise the Secretariat. It should not dictate or direct the Secretariat. And that, I think, is a difference in opinion which we see in the working group report. In terms of amending the decisions, we can concur with I think Mexico, the representative from the North American region, was alluding at. I thought that was a helpful suggestion that after having moved actually the section of that, as you already proposed, Mr. Chair, having this idea that that the Secretariat continues to support or work with, or whatever terminology we agreed on, with the Technical Advisory Committee, through which the Animals and Plants Committee provided support and advice for implementing decisions 18132 to 18134. I think that's a helpful suggestion to make sure that the Animals and Plants Committee remain in charge, remain completely involved in the implementation of this decision, which at the moment is directed to the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat, for that clarification of the current status of the decisions, what the COP has tasked whom to do. So I would like to give the floor now to North America. Rosemary, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm speaking here as the U.S. representative, not as the PC representative for North America, since this was an Animals Committee issue. The U.S. agrees with what the Secretariat has said. It was very important to our region that the Animals and Plants Committee be involved in this activity and the establishment of the TAC. And therefore, we recognize that the COP18 decisions directed the Secretariat, and that if a donor was found prior to when COP19 would be held, we wanted this work to begin. And so we agree with what the Secretariat has said, and we would support the language put forward by the North American representative to the Plants Committee, that we stick with 19BB, having the continue in it with the change from China ad hoc, and also assert above 19AA a little I, the continuing language, as the chair had suggested, with the ad hoc. I think this will give clear guidance to the parties and the Secretariat how we wish to proceed, but we recognizing these decisions would not be adopted until COP19 and will be discussed at COP19, but we want the Secretariat to be able to, with the consultation, the Animals and Plants Committee, to initiate this work if a donor is found, so that we don't lose that momentum and the time and all the other recommendations that are coming out of this COM document. So that is our suggestion for the way forward, rather than, saying establish a TAC at COP19, because it may be a moot point. The Secretariat gets a donor at the end of the year, they'll start this work, and they have that direction from the COP. So we totally agree with what the Secretariat has said, and hope we can accept this way forward, and still recognizing the importance of Animals and Plants Committee involvement. We think that the text does that now. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you, United States. Any more comments, suggestions? I see Canada has asked for the floor. Canada.
Thank you, Chair. I'm requesting the floor on behalf of Canada. I would like to support the intervention of the US. Really, it seems like even from the working group that everybody is aiming for the same outcomes here. We all want this work to go forward. It's really important for the parties and for the convention to advance work on non-detriment findings. So my sense is that we are just trying to find a way that the words reflect our wishes and comfort, but it is very important for us that a technical advisory committee gets formed before COP19 so that this work could get started as soon as possible. We do not want to miss the opportunity and delay these processes. A lot of good work can go forward. So I hope we can come to an agreement on those recommended changes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. And finally, I have Europe. Europe, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Let me very briefly just support the proposal by the US and also the arguments by Canada. It's really important to have the work started as soon as possible and to keep the continuity across the COP. And the proposal by the US seems to provide this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Europe. And I see also the PC representative of Europe, Paolo.
Confirm the support also from the side of the PC representatives from Europe. Yeah, we agree to follow the suggested way to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see IWMC.
Bon, est-ce que vous m'entendez maintenant?
Oui, c'est bon.
Ah, merci.
Greetings to everyone. Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. I thought I would introduce a different language, says the speaker. I would like to raise a rather technical point, perhaps. You were talking about setting up a technical advisory committee, but if I'm not mistaken, CITES establishes committees with the agreement of parties. It's not clear to me how the Plants or Animals Committee can set up another committee. That seems to be against the rules of procedure. I think we need to change the term and talk about a technical advisory group or ad hoc technical advisory group. I think, in other words, sir, we should avoid the word committee. Thank you, Jacques, for that contribution.
The North American representative on the Animals Committee, Ezekiel, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. We already have two expressos and still not fully awake. But can we hear the amendment proposal to be sure where exactly we are?
Yes.
Maybe highlighting the spirit of what we want from Secretariat is to continue to provide the advice.
Yes.
At this point, but that will be very helpful. And I believe what Jack just mentioned, he's right on the use of words like committee, but that's another issue as well. Thank you.
Thank you, North America. So from what I have heard, I would like to now suggest that I read out the changes as they have been proposed and supported by the by several members. So if we look at the decisions 19AA, The first part will read now the Secretariat, directed to the Secretariat. The Secretariat shall A. Subject to external funding, address priorities and capacity building related to non-detriment findings agreed by the Secretariat and the Technical Advisory Committee, TAC, in consultation with the Animals and Plants Committees and parties by new little I, continuing to support the Technical Advisory Committee through which the Animals and Plants Committees provided support and advice for implementing decisions 18132 to 18134. Then the rest stays the same. It will just be little I and III and little III. And then we have a next change in decision 19BB directed to the Animals and Plants Committees, and it would read, the Animals and Plants Committees shall A. Continue the ad hoc Technical Advisory Committee TAC established under recommendations contained in AC 31 PC 25 com 3, through which the Animals and Plants Committees provided support and advice for implementing Decision 18132 to 18134, review the functioning of the TAC and make any appropriate decisions, and so on. So these are the changes that have been, I think, agreed by the parties here. I let you digest that a moment and see if you can agree. Then you don't need to say anything. If you have questions or concerns, please raise your hand that we can discuss them. I see the representative from Oceania. You have asked for the floor.
Of the current decisions is that the Secretariat's tasked with organising one or more such workshops. There's actually no mention of a technical advisory committee or ad hoc committee supporting them. And so I see it really as a role of the Secretariat to ask for that assistance from Animals Committee and Plants Committee. And so it should be entirely in their hands to set up this group and set up the mandate and work together with that group to organise those workshops. So I'm not quite clear whether I've got the wrong end of the stick, but it seems as though it should be driven primarily by the Secretariat, not by the committees.
Thank you. I think what we are talking about now is how do the committees think that the work will continue post COP19? That's what these decisions are for. How the Technical Advisory Committee is being formed. That is something that is also in this working group report, and it will be formed with as it stands now, with the support of the chairs of the two committees. They will advise the Secretariat on the composition, on the forming of this Technical Advisory Committee. That is what is coming out of this working group report. I see the Secretary General has asked for the floor, so Yvonne, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all for the interventions on this item. I wanted to just support what the representative of Oceania has just said, that I think this is what's causing a bit of the confusion, that there doesn't seem to be anything in 19AA about what the Secretariat should do about the TAC. Since it's the Secretariat who has to establish the TAC, it is, as you had said earlier, possibly include something in 19AA where it says that the Secretariat shall continue the TAC that was established to give by the AC. Well, we could not say that it was established by the AC, but was established for the ACPC members to give advice to the Secretariat. So if we add that in 19AA, it takes away that confusion about who is continuing the TAC, since it is the job of the Secretariat to establish it and continue it. And then leave, as was suggested, then put in 19BB, where it says now in A, continue the TAC through which Animals and Plants Committees provided support. It's simply say that the Animals and Plants Committees will continue to provide support through the TAC. And that way, I think it clarifies the functions that each one has. And there's no more questioning about who establishes, and we leave it more elegantly, I think, that way, without making any allusion to the establishment itself. So I would suggest, again, that in 19AA to add under little a, subject to external funding, to continue the technical advisory committee or group, however it's decided here. I understand also that comment earlier, and address priorities and capacity building, etc. And then under 19BB, under A, instead of continue the TAC, continue providing advice through the technical advisory committee, or providing support and advice through the TAC. That would be my suggestion in order to clarify this issue of who establishes what and how this TAC can continue. Because it is ad hoc, because it is being set up to be able to carry out the project as was suggested by the Secretariat with the resource mobilization that we have been doing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Secretary General. I'm not quite clear what we put under 19AA little I. Continue the technical advisory committee or group. We'll clarify the wording there. Or to continuing to support the TAC. That is something you are suggesting, continuing the technical advisory committee, as I suggested from the start, because I think it was also my view that it is the Secretariat who sets up that technical advisory committee and continues it. But that would not be in line with what has come out from the working group so far. So this is another way of continuing. So I would put this now up for this discussion. I see North America. Rosemary, you have the floor. I can't hear you, Rosemary. Sorry. I still can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's good.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry to take the floor again. I would like to, on behalf of the United States, support the original language the chair just suggested, rather than the Secretary General's language. I think it is important to us and our region that the Animals Committee and the Plants Committee be engaged in this activity. We recognize the decisions adopted at COP18 give that direction to the Secretariat now. However, as we move forward into COP19 and plan for this workshop, we would like the language to be, as we worked out in the working group, to continue to support the TAC both in 19AA and in 19BB, and would like that language to remain. Thank you.
Okay. I see this North American region AC representative.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. We support what Rosemary just mentioned. I thank the Secretary General for trying the inclusion under 19AA, but I believe we should keep A as it is, because it is referring on secretariat support on capacity building priorities. And then we prefer your formulation, Chair, by adding a new Roman. So we will have 3 Romans under A. And the first is to continue provide support to the TAC, and then to organize a workshop, and then to develop new or update the guidance materials. I think makes sense with your formulation, and not necessarily at the chapeau, let's say, on A can be confusing, but maintaining the 3 little Romans makes sense under this spirit, as my colleague just from the US just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, North America. I see Europe.
Thank you very much, Chair. We are a little bit playing with the words, because I need to recognize that the cooperation between the Secretariat and parties has always been of very high standard, but still also for the European region, we would prefer your proposal as then supported by the US and Mexico. Thank you.
Thank you. So for the moment, it stands as I have read out the changes, the decisions as with the changes proposed by North American region and China. It would remain like that. Now I would like to see. I think we have agreed on the way forward here. I would now like to see if there are further comments on the other issues that we have. Sorry about that. I'm being attacked by a cat. Just sorry. Concerning the. Sorry. It is insisting. Okay. I think that the issues that the technical committee will be established, I think we are clear that it will be established, and to advise the Secretariat that the Animals and Plants Committee chairs will advise the Secretariat on the modalities, terms of reference, and timing for the establishment of the TAC. I don't like to be rude to a cat, so I gently put it down. And that the committees agree that the additional priorities and work streams suggested in COM3, as well as the proposed prioritization, be considered when establishing final priorities and work streams for implementing decisions 18132. I think these are the 3 other points that I need to hear agreement or comments or suggestions from the committee, so that I can finalize the recommendations from the 2 committees. So I open the floor for any comments, indicating that if you don't comment, then you agree, and I will read out the recommendations then again. Okay, I don't see anybody asking for the floor, so I think then I would conclude and would. Sorry, now he is really getting me in trouble. No, good, thank you. So the Animals and Plants Committees recommend the following. A technical advisory committee or group, we will get the wording correct, will be established to advise the Secretariat on the implementation of Decision 18132. The Animals and Plants Committee chairs will advise the Secretariat on the modalities, terms of reference, and timing for establishing the Technical Advisory Committee. The committees agree that the additional priorities and work streams suggested in AC 31, PC 25, COM3, as well as the proposed prioritization, be considered when establishing final priorities and work streams for implementing Decision 18132. And the committees agree on the submission of draft decisions 19AA to 19CC in AC 31, PC 25, COM3 as amended by the North American region and China, and the chair of the Animals Committee to the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. So that would be my conclusion of our discussion here. I don't see anybody objecting, so I think that is what the Animals and Plants Committee agree on here. So thank you very much. And with this, I see CITES Secretary General who is asking for the floor. CITES Secretary General, you have the floor. Almost forgot.
Thank you, Matthias. I think that the cat distracted you a little bit.
Yes, it sure did.
I would like to thank you very much for the ending of the discussion on NDF and the agreement. I am happy that to be able to announce that we have some good news, some very good news, that thanks to the efforts of the Secretariat, especially the science team, who have been working with donors to try to ensure mobilizing resources to be able to carry out this work. I would like to, with your permission, Chair, to invite Germany to make an announcement.
Yes, thank you very much. So, Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary General, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, in the context of the decisions currently adopted by the committee, it is with great pleasure to inform you that in response to decision 18.134, the German Ministry for the Environment, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety has informed us that funds are available for the implementation of decision 18.132. With other words, Germany will hopefully soon come to a contract with its Secretariat covering, together with other potential donors, the preparation for and conducting the second international expert workshop on NDFs and the publishing of its results. Today's decisions of the joint committees and their continued involvement will indeed be helpful guidances and basis for the further implementation of the project. And we very much hope that the strong commitment and the support of the CITES community for the improvement of NDFs, as shown lately also in the great interest in contributing to the in-session working group, will continue and guarantee the success of this work. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Germany. Thank you, Germany, for this very good news. So I think we are set to go. We have set the plate, and we will continue working in that direction. And thank you very much for your very generous support. That is, I think, very well welcomed by everyone. Thank you. So with this positive news, I cede my place, and I would like to give the floor to the PC chair, Flora now. I think we have to also change the roles in the system, I suppose, or not this time.
Merci.
Okay, in that case. In that case, we don't seem to need. Okay, now I'm off. Thank you.
Okay. Merci, Madame la Secrétaire Générale.
Thank you, Secretary General. Thank you, Chair of the Animals Committee, and well done for this first part, which was covered brilliantly. I hope I'll be able to do the same. and welcome to the new members. Welcome to our new member. I'm going to open this second part of our meeting with the item on our agenda, which is document AC 31.15 and .18 on the identification, and we have Ms. Rosemary Nyan as co-chair of the working group, and we will ask her to present the report of this in-session working group, which is in document AC 31 PC 25 COM2. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish to introduce document AC 31 PC 25 COM2 on identification materials. I wish to express my sincere thanks to my co-chair, Hugh Robinson, the Secretariat, and the working group members for their input and collaboration. The working group's mandate included 2 items. 1, review the proposed draft resolution contained in the annex to document AC 31 Doc 15 PC 25 document 18, addendum, and if needed, revise the resolution for consideration of the Animals and Plants Committee and onward submission to the Standing Committee, and to draft or revise decisions on identification materials for submission to the Conference of the Parties at its 19th meeting. The working group, in its discussions, recognized the importance of identification materials to assist parties in their implementation and enforcement activities. In this COM document, we present a proposed draft resolution for consideration by the Plants Committee and subsequently the Standing Committee at SC 74. This draft resolution, entitled Materials for the Identification of Specimens of CITES Listed Species, if adopted at COP19, would replace the current resolution, COMF 11.19 Rev COP 16. We also present in this COM document a series of decisions to continue the identification materials work that unfortunately was not completed in this intersessional period due to the pandemic. In addition, I wish to request that the ACPC mandate their chairs, with the assistance of the working group, to continue to draft the proposed new resolution on identification materials if necessary after discussion by the Standing Committee. In this way, the working group officially ceases to exist, but is still working in its capacity to assist the ACPC chairs as allowed under Resolution Conf 18.2. In addition, I have a small edit to offer to the draft resolution, as we had agreed to this text in our working group discussions, but it was unfortunately not caught by me in the final draft resolution. So to 4A in the resolution, paragraph 4A, to insert the phrase to the extent possible after providing information, parties provide identification information to the extent possible in the proposals for amendment of the appendices, including information, and the rest of that paragraph remains the same. It is just a minor change to acknowledge that providing this information is voluntary, so it's to the extent possible. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci.
Thank you to the representative of North America region for this report. As chair of the working group, I would now like to give the floor to members of the Plants Committee for any comments on this report. Members, the floor is yours.
Ok. Voilà.
I now give the floor to the representative of Oceania, Mr. Robertson. As co-chair, is that as how you wish to speak? You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I would also like to thank my co-chair in turn, and just, I guess, point out that we had a intersessional working group working away at this resolution, and so we had a relatively straightforward task. It was more a working, rather than a full working group, it was more of a drafting group. So most of the work had been done by many players in the lead up to this particular meeting. And I should point out that some of the decisions may not be necessary if the resolution does go through as proposed. And that can be sorted out by the Standing Committee and also by the conference of the parties at the time. So yeah, I just like to thank everyone for their support in getting this new resolution up and running. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le.
Thank you to the representative of Oceania and on the Plants Committee and co-chair of this working group. Would it be possible to repeat what you said on the decisions? I had a slight cutting off of the program for me. You have the floor again, sir.
Monsieur le représentant de l'Océanie, je vous donne.
Representative of Oceania, you have the floor once more. If you could just repeat the comments on the decision, the draft decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, if the resolution is accepted by the Conference of the Parties as it stands, or firstly by the Standing Committee and then by the Conference of the Parties in that order, some of the decisions may not actually be required, and so we would have to maybe revise some of the decisions at the Conference of the Parties meeting next year. But the first step would be to pass the new resolution or any amendments to it, and then see whether the decisions are necessary. But on this, well, just to cover ourselves, just in case the resolution is not accepted, then more work will need to be done across a wide range of areas on identification materials. So yeah, just clarifying that. Thank you.
Je vous remercie d'avoir accepté de.
Thank you for having repeated that. I would now like to open the floor to members of the committee from the Animals Committee and the Plants Committee, if anyone wishes to comment on what we have heard from the co-chair of this working group. I do not see any request for the floor. Other parties? Would anyone wish to comment? The floor is open, and then after the parties, the observer parties, I will give the floor to observers. There are no requests for the floor. Observers, the floor is yours. The floor is open. No request for the floor. So, there are no comments. You've already discussed this and you're exhausted already. I think we will be able to conclude on this. So I suggest that the Animals Committee and the Plants Committee are asked to agree to submit the draft resolution and draft decisions annexed to document AC31 PC25 COM2 as Oh, that's not how I should say it, says the Chair. Secretariat? There were no amendments. Oh, was there an amendment, says the Secretariat? Yes, there was an amendment. You were right, Chair, says the Secretariat. Quite right. So I'll continue, says the Chair. The Animals Committee and the Plants Committee are asked to agree to submit the draft resolution and the draft decisions annexed to document AC31 PC25 COM2 as amended by the Working Group Chair for consideration by the Standing Committee at its 74th meeting. And here I haven't had any feedback on the potential of having a working group continuing working on the resolution if necessary. Should I announce the decision? It wasn't raised, Secretariat. Thank you, Madam Chair. The representative of North America proposed that the two committees delegate the responsibility to continue the discussion within the Standing Committee to the chairs of the committees, and that they provide support from the working group. That was what was proposed. Thank you. The Secretariat is speaking. The Secretariat could... Okay, so the Chair says, I'll start again from the beginning. So, the Animals Committee and the Plants Committee are asked to agree to submit the to submit the draft resolution and draft decisions annexed to document AC31 PC25 COM2 as amended by the Chair of the Working Group for consideration by the Standing Committee at its 74th meeting. And B, if necessary, that the chairs of the committees, with the assistance of the working group, will continue working on a new resolution on identification materials if necessary and submit it to the Standing Committee for input and onward submission to the COP. Is that correct? Very well. Thank you. Thank you to everyone. So, now we will be closing our joint AC31 PC25 meeting, but we are going to come back to the agenda items that were not covered. So the item on nomenclature of Appendix III listings, decision 18313. I'm going to give the floor to the nomenclature specialist from the Animals Committee to introduce the document. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone. In document AC31.39, which is also PC25.33, the background to decision 18.313 on the nomenclature of species listed in Appendix III is presented. And in its annex, a detailed discussion is presented of the particular complications that nomenclatural changes can impact on species that are listed in Appendix III of CITES. This document was discussed in the Animals Committee's working group on nomenclature earlier this year, and it received input from the Plants Committee. I thank all for their helpful input. Based on the input received, it appears desirable to continue further deliberations on this complex topic, including close engagement with the Standing Committee and the Secretariat. And this is to further define the scope and focus of the documentation to be prepared for the Standing Committee by the Plants and Animals Committees. These deliberations will likely need to continue after the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, and a renewal of decisions 18.313 and 18.314 at COP19 appears desirable. They may be amended as follows, and I will try to post this in the chat after I'm done speaking. Decision 18.313 is directed to the Animals and Plants Committees. The Animals and Plants Committee shall, taking into consideration the current guidance in Resolution Conf 12.11, Rev COP 18, on standard nomenclature, paragraph 2G, evaluate how nomenclature changes affect Appendix III listings and propose further guidance and recommendations as necessary. And here is the change made from the current decision by striking out the part that says for consideration by the Standing Committee at its 73rd meeting. So that section is taken out. And instead, the decision continues that addresses how such nomenclature changes are to be handled for consideration by the Standing Committee. And correspondingly, in decision 18.314, rather than reading out the whole thing, quite simply it deletes the instruction that the Standing Committee shall consider this at its 73rd meeting, and quite simply leave it up to the Standing Committee when to discuss this. And likewise, the Standing Committee is then requested to report to the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, so strike 19th meeting of the parties. And therefore, we recommend that the scientific committees support the submission of these updated decisions to COP19 as part of the nomenclature specialist reports. Thank you, Chair.
Merci, le spécialiste.
Thank you to the nomenclature specialist for this very clear presentation. I will now give the floor to those who wish to comment on what we have just heard reported by the nomenclature specialist. Members of the committees, the floor is yours. I see no request for the floor. So now, observer parties, the floor is open. I woke up with a good sip of coffee. Maybe everyone else should have some coffee. Observers, any comments? I do not see a request for the floor. So I think we can arrive at the following conclusion, that the Animals and Plants Committee agree to propose the renewal of decisions 18.313 and 18.314 to the Standing Committee, with the amendments proposed by the nomenclature specialist. So, the last item on the agenda is on document AC31 Doc 41.1 and PC25 Doc 39.1, which is on the overview of species under periodic review. I will present this document. Document AC31 Doc 41.1 PC25 Doc 39.1 was prepared by the Secretariat and presents an overview of the animal and plant species in the periodic review process during the period between the Conference of the Parties 17 and the 19th Conference of the Parties. In Annexes 1A to 1D, the document provides a record of animal species selected for review by the Animals Committee between COP 13 and COP 15, and between COP 15 and COP 17, and between COP 16 and COP 18, and between COP 17 and COP 19. This document also contains Annex 1E, which provides an overview of the status of all animal cases as of April 2020. This provides an overview of their status. The same information is given for plants species in Annex 2A through to 2D. The Animals and Plants Committees are invited to take note of the document which I have presented. So I open the floor to members of the committees to hear your comments or observations on the document. Observer parties, the floor is open for you.
Observateur, la parole est à vous.
The floor is open now to observers. I see no requests for the floor. I therefore would conclude that you are in agreement with the decision that was taken. That is, that the Plants and Animal Committees have taken note of AC 3141.1, PC 24, Doc 39.1. You have taken note of the document, and that means that I have now dealt with the agenda that I had to deal with for the second part of this meeting. The Secretariat has the floor.
Perhaps expecting some closing remarks, Madam Chair, from the Secretary General. Thank you.
Je pense, mais bon.
Well, I just said that I felt that we had concluded our work for this morning. And that means that the AC 31 PC 25 joint meeting has come to an end. So that means that we have concluded our work. And we've even managed to finish early. In other words, I think my work is done, so let me hand over to the Secretariat. as we have agreed, we will be meeting on Tuesday and Thursday as Animals Committee and Wednesday and Thursday as Plants Committee in order to wrap up PC 31 and AC 31 and PC 25. I'll be happy to see you then, but meanwhile, the Secretariat has the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair of the Plants Committee, Mr. Chair of the Animals Committee, members of the Animals and Plants Committees, distinguished delegates and participants, dear colleagues. It was such a pleasure to witness this first joint online session of the Animals and Plants Committees, and I warmly congratulate you all for having so successfully completed its business. To our dear chairs, Matthias Lorcher and Flor Koumba, I extend my thanks for the excellent job you have done in leading us to the 2 joint sessions of AC 31 and PC 25 early in June and again today. I know this was not an easy task. The 3 working groups that you established allowed for substantial and fruitful discussions and good outcomes that can be taken forward to COP19. I would also like to extend my appreciation to the members of the Animals and Plants Committees, delegates and participants for their valuable contributions and for showing adaptability and indulgence where needed, mindful of the challenges inherent to online meetings and online working group discussions. We have by far exceeded participation records in CITES AC and PC meetings with a number of participants and many who have never participated before, a large number of participants and many who have never participated before in the AC PC meetings or in the joint meetings. After today's session, the Animals Committee and Plants Committee have jointly provided recommendations relating to the CITES strategic vision, Appendix I listed species, Appendix III listings, and synergies with the IPBES, among others. Likewise, the committee significantly helped to advance work on non-detriment findings guidance, and here I take advantage and say thank you again to Germany for their generosity so that we can get this work started. The identification materials and capacity building, all of which I trust will assist our parties in enhancing their implementation of the convention. The CITES community is known for its enthusiasm, knowledge, and passion for conservation, and this was again confirmed in these joint Animal Committee and Plant Committee sessions. Congratulations again to all, and many thanks to all, and especially to the Secretariat, my colleagues in the Secretariat, who have continued to work tirelessly to make sure that these meetings can go smoothly. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
I would like to thank you, Secretary General. I do apologize. I too should have thanked the chairs of the working groups. Everyone has worked very hard, and it is very difficult to work in this way. When you're at a meeting in person, encounters and meetings are easier. However, we have done good work. It is clear that there is still the same level of enthusiasm, whatever the working environment. We've done very well in our virtual meeting, and that might bode well for future meetings, because we may very well find ourselves meeting like this again, and now we have some experience. There have, of course, been some logistics problems and some internet access issues, and I certainly had those sorts of problems when I was chairing my working group. I will not say anything more, Madam Secretary General. I think you have wrapped up the meeting for us. Thanks to all. If the Secretariat has any more announcements, you have the floor, but thank you.
This is goodbye, but not a farewell, because we see each other in the next 3 days. Tomorrow, the Animals Committee, as you mentioned, is going to work again. They will conclude their business on Thursday. And on Wednesday, you, Madam Chair, will again chair the Plants Committee, and also on Thursday. And take a look at the CITES webpage, where you can find the order in which the Animals and Plants committees are going to go through their business, the order of items, and so you get an idea of what comes first and what will come last. That's everything I want to say. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Merci. Sur ce, je peux.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you. See you tomorrow and the day after tomorrow and the day after that. Thank you and have a good day or a good evening. Goodbye.